And thank you for joining us today for our webinar today about the Crisis Resilience Fund. And we're looking at making the management of that simple this morning. So we're going to do welcome and introductions now. We'll then talk about who Icotech are, just to welcome you onto the webinar today for anyone that doesn't know who we are. We'll then be talking about the Crisis Resilience Fund, giving a better understanding of what it is, navigating those new reporting requirements that have come down from DWP, and then also looking at how that can be automated, automating that reporting around CRF and the insights it can bring, the solutions around that, and we'll have time for a Q&A at the end. That being said, if you've got any questions as we go through, please do feel free to put them in the chat. We might answer a few of them as we go along. We might leave them to the end, just depending on timing, etc. So there are three of us that are on the call today. There is myself. I'm Sam Fars. I'm the partner manager here at Icotech Services. Have been here for 3 months now, but have got a history. My last sort of 3 years and a bit, I was working with organisations that were sort of supporting Household Support Fund and bits and pieces. And I'm joined on the call this morning as well by Joel Markham. Joel, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, thanks, Sam. Good morning, everybody. Yeah, my name is Joel Markham. I'm the CEO and founder of Icotech Services. I'll be talking today about some of the solutions we deliver here for some of our customers across the public sector. So very pleased to have you all on board, and hopefully you take some value from this call today. Thanks for your time.
Thanks, Joel. Yeah, and absolutely thrilled that my friend and former colleague Rachel Walker is also joining us this morning. Rachel?
Hi, good morning, everyone. I'm Rachel Walker. I'm founder of Better Policy, a public and social policy consultancy, and I support local government and different organisations to deliver Crisis and Resilience Fund and other related policies. And I'm here to talk about the policy background and what we can do and what we can learn from HSF to CRF.
Lovely. Thanks, Rachel. So yeah, I'll get us started. So we're going to talk a little bit about who Icotech Services are for anyone that doesn't know who we are. And Icotech Services are specialists in the Power Platform. So that is the Microsoft platform that sort of underpins a lot of stuff that you'll be doing already, and things that you'll be using already. Everything we do, we use a consultative approach. So every single engagement, we bespoke things either to you as an individual organisation, to you as an individual authority, but also looking at sort of local government as a whole as well, and sort of where there are things that can sort of be shared across local government, across the NHS, across central government as well. We build, maintain, enhance business applications within our unique optimization service model. So that is where we continue to develop and make sure things that are working for you and continue to improve things on top of that. There are lots of areas that we specialise, sort of project portfolio management, enterprise risk management and strategic planning. And for us, CRF sort of falls into that sort of realm as well. I was about to say next slide, please. Then I remembered that I was in charge of the slides. So this is our solution landscape. Top part up here is our sort of 4 main, we call them accelerators, but 4 main products, 4 main solutions. I can see Joel's eyes being daggers at me calling them products. But we have IcoPlan, IcoRisk, IcoView, and IcoTeam that all do sort of different parts and sort of solve different problems for organisations. But we'll mostly be talking today about one of our bespoke application services, which is our grant management system, which we can tailor build for the Crisis Resilience Fund, within which you can manage funds and your spend activities, seeing where the impact has been, seeing where the money has gone, how it's been spent, and all the reporting that sort of comes around that as well. And we are trusted. Oh, next slide, Sam. We are trusted by organisations across local government. People like IPO, Oxfordshire County Council, Staffordshire County Council, Southampton Council, Stoke Council, people like the GLA, Blaenau Gwent. There's lots of logos that are up here as well, but not just here in the UK. We also operate globally. The St John's ambulance that is there is always a very early morning call because they are over in Australia. So I always have to make sure that I've set an early alarm when I'm talking to St John's ambulance, because it's normally when I would still be fast asleep. But we're building solutions across local government, across the NHS, across central government, and public sector really is our primary focus. So I'm now going to hand over to Rachel. Rachel.
Thank you, Sam. Yeah, so I'm not a software solutions provider, but I am a policy consultant, and Sam and Joel have asked me to come here today to talk about the Crisis and Resilience Fund, what we can learn from more recent crisis funding, specifically the Household Support Fund, and the difference between the Household Support Fund and the CRF, and the reporting requirements, the different policy elements in particular. Now, I think it's important to understand the evolution of crisis support ever so slightly. So next slide, please, Sam. In terms of, thank you. So I'm not going to dwell on this a lot, but I do think it's important because for those of us who've been working in policy throughout the austerity period and throughout the different phases of crisis funding, it is important because each policy wave around immediate support or crisis support builds on each other, and CRF is really only the latest sort of iteration of crisis support. But because we do build on each policy, we do have some learning that's handy for CRF, but also really handy for reporting requirements, demography requirements, etc. So pre-2020, local welfare assistance was patchy because in 2013, as part of the government's many austerity measures, they stopped ring fencing crisis support. And in many areas, I'm native to Lancashire, my own native Lancashire, we stopped with crisis and resilience funding or anything like it, local welfare assistance, because austerity really took over. And so some councils kind of lost that institutional knowledge around delivering crisis support. This is important because after 2020, pandemic support, I mean, anybody working in local government through pandemic will remember sort of the multitude of very short-term crisis supports, winter support allowances, test and trace support payments and the like. They were all quite fleeting. But because many organisations had lost that institutional knowledge, the reporting requirements, the distribution, we can see some of this loss of institutional knowledge in the Household Support Fund and the way it's been delivered. So between 2021 2025, as we all know, and I'm not teaching anybody anything new here, we've had the Household Support Fund. Now, the Household Support Fund has been absolutely brilliant in that it's given all councils more or less level playing field to reintroduce some level of crisis support for its residents. However, the very short-term distribution mechanism that the government put into place meant not only were our policy-making behaviours locally sort of dictated to by very short-term grant funding, but there's been an enormous loss of opportunity for learning through the Household Support Fund. I've studied the Household Support Fund a couple of times, looking into the national statistics return and the management information that we have, and we actually know very little about who's received household support funding, where these people came from, what the crisis pathway, if you will. We're not quite sure what impact any of the funding had. We don't know exactly sort of what was delivered through partners, what was delivered through organisations like local councils. Now, if in terms of reporting requirements, and again, I've delivered some of this for local authorities, HSF really sort of focused on proving that funding was spent. Now, that's quite an easy thing to do for councils, but because the reporting focus was on proving that the money was spent, what we can see from the Household Support Fund is that sort of reporting requirement, tail wagging the dog, if you will, kind of dictated policy-making behaviours. And what we saw were large funding outputs like allocations to free school meals during the holidays, a wonderful way of getting money to families that we already know are in need, but also a really good way of local authorities spending that money quite quickly, spending it in a certified way and getting it out the door, because the short-term requirements, we didn't know sometimes from one 6-month period to the next if the Household Support Fund was going to carry on. The Crisis and Resilience Fund is fundamentally different as a result. And now I think my opinion is it requires a very fundamentally different approach to reporting, to data gathering, and to sort of the policy making behaviours that we get from that. So we've no more tail wagging the dog in terms of management reporting, dictating what we do with our local policy discretion, but we do have much greater emphasis on reporting to government, to the DWP, and Crisis and Resilience Fund isn't about proving that the money was spent anymore. Thank you, Sam. Can I have the next slide?
Sorry.
That's all right.
There we are.
So there's me doing my best, Professor Sir Chris Whitty. Next slide, please, Sam. I was quite envious of people that did that. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time sort of trash talking the household support fund. What is gone has gone, and that's fine. But this short-termism didn't mean that nobody cared, but it did mean that longer-term thinking and evaluation wasn't really on the cards. So household support fund gave us heavy reliance on partners, something that we now see in the Crisis and Resilience Fund. So the Crisis and Resilience Fund guidance nudges local authorities towards strengthening community resilience through organisational resilience. So working with those VCFSE partners has been a major strength of the Household Support Fund, so it's been built into the Crisis and Resilience Fund. Now, because most councils, a lot of councils, I should say, simply don't have the resources either to dedicate to crisis funding or to short-term grant funding requirements. Now, some councils are very lucky. They've got in-house teams that are far better and far more established at doing these things. However, particularly some small districts simply don't have the resources to do this. And so they are relying a lot more on technology and a lot more on VCFSE partners. Now, again, this short-termism has meant that when getting money out through partners, the return on management information was almost kind of a secondary thought. When putting management returns together on behalf of local authorities, particularly through the early rounds of household support funding, because we were only dealing with things 6 months at a time, nobody really, well, very few people, it's not fair to say nobody, very few people thought about closing that loop and getting the information back from their third sector partners. Data sharing agreements, as Sam and I are painfully aware from the work that we've done together, can clog up any system and can stop money from getting to quite vulnerable families. But in case of the Household Support Fund, it didn't stop the money getting out, but it did stop the learning coming back to us. And I don't understand or know architect services particularly well, but one of the reasons I'm more than happy to talk on this webinar is because I know that that loop is closed through some of their reporting requirements, and your third sector partners can provide that information now that you need in order to satisfy not just the DWP, but your own council's learning as well, because as well as a loss of institutional memory from crisis funds going back pre-2020, there's actually not been a great deal of learning from the Household Support Fund locally either. Now, again, not because of a lack of care, not because of a lack of dedication to policy making or to getting support for vulnerable families, or even for learning and evaluation, but because it simply wasn't on the cards for the government. And what the government asks for was I think it might have been Gordon Brown. Don't quote me on the Gordon Brown bit, but do quote me on this. What gets measured gets done. Now, that's the HSS that's failing, because what they asked for was what got done. I'm probably butchering that saying now, but the kind of other half of that saying is that you can hit the target, but you can miss the point. And that's exactly what HSF did. It got the money out, but the learning simply wasn't there. Now, in this missed opportunity, I think the government have recognised this, and if anybody who was familiar with HSF guidance and reporting requirements and the evolution of HSF over its short lifespan, and now looks at CRF guidance, you can see, well, I can see a shift in the government. They've recognised a loss of learning opportunity, and the CRF guidance and reporting requirements are cousins, not sisters, let's put it that way. They have definitely evolved, and so the crisis support now is clearer. It's part of more of an enduring welfare landscape. I am hesitant to use the term permanent crisis, an oxymoron, but it does seem to be where we're going. However, we have been here before, and we recognise that crisis isn't a one-off. It is a one-off perhaps on an individual level, but there is a rumbling low level of crisis support that needs reliable organisation, needs reliable policy, needs reliable software in order to get the money out rapidly, but also to get that learning coming back in. Sam, could I have the next slide, please? Thank you. Now, because there is a multi-year settlement for the Crisis and Resilience Fund, and bear in mind this is only 3 years, this is a blink of an eye in terms of welfare reform and in terms of any kind of grant funding like this. But this multi-year settlement intended to introduce stability, planning, and kind of formative evaluation planning as well. So when I talk about formative evaluation planning, I mean, don't think of evaluation as something at the end of your program that you need to then think of to prove that something's been done. Formative evaluation planning involves thinking now at the beginning of this 3-year period, how are you going to build a policy, and alongside that, the reporting requirements and support for that reporting requirements that you need, not just in 3 years' time to prove that the money was spent judiciously or properly or, according to local need. But have a think now, this is my kind of call to many local councils at the moment, is have a think not just about year 3, but have a think about year 2. Have a think about what you're going to learn in year 1 that where you can iteratively improve on your local crisis and resilience funding outputs in year 2 and year 3. There is enough time, if we do this properly, to be able to learn locally, not just at the end of the 3-year period, but at intervals throughout the lifespan of the Crisis and Resilience Fund. Not just an opportunity to gather local intelligence, which is essential. So when you're looking at local intelligence, are you looking at where direct debits are dropping? Are you looking at subtle changes in your revenue for the local council? Are you looking at the changing nature of how the people are presenting to crisis and resilience funding going forward? Because different avenues in, different needs, different types of people. This is all an opportunity to gather local intelligence that could quite easily support your policy making for the next 5 to 10 years if you do it well enough now. It's a great opportunity. Strengthening community capacity is a major part of the Crisis and Resilience Fund. And I was talking earlier, a few minutes ago, about closing that data loop. We know, and I've seen from organisations where the money goes out from the council, but the data cannot come back in. Your CAB or your local age concern or whoever you're working with locally has their own data requirements, and as the controller of their data, it's very difficult for them to close that loop. What we need is access to the information, and I understand that Architect do provide this. Now, a major shift in the reporting requirements are also sort of around demography. So the demographics around Crisis and Resilience Fund are a little more granular than household support funding ever was. Anybody who's worked with household support funding will remember it was basically old people, young people, disabled people, other people, and that was kind of it. Now, that isn't demography that we work with in a policy environment. It's certainly not Crisis and Resilience Fund level demography that we need. But part of the lack of learning that we've got from the HSF is that we actually don't know beyond that really where the money went. And we're talking about several £billions. Now, the DWP are talking, and it's in their guidance, about more granular demography reporting. They're also talking about ad hoc reporting. I have seen the DWP dip into and sort of do test case testing around similar grant funding like this, particularly during the pandemic. So it's something to bear in mind. But in terms of councils considering that iterative policy, considering particularly if you are an LGR area, so if you're a district or a county or a unitary going through local government reorganisation, the CRF spans the period or straddles the period of local government reorganisation. So year 3, if you are in an LGR area, will look fundamentally different from years 1 and 2. So again, the loss of learning by the time we get to year 3 is really going to dictate whether or not your new council has an established CRF policy where they can use this local intelligence. It's actually quite complex, isn't it? And there's a lot to think about on a Tuesday morning. So forgive me, but there is an awful lot beyond just getting the money out of the door. And the councils that I'm working with, the ones that are doing it really well, have got their eyes on this, not as something that is a burden to have to report back to the DWP, but something that they can use for learning. So my advice when it comes to the CRF in this sense is not to treat it in isolation. Have a think about CRF and the data that you can gather. in relation to LGR, but also that local intelligence could massively feed into, you know, your child poverty strategy or anti-poverty work. It can help, you can use the data as well to have a look at isolation in older people, for example. You may even be able to, if you do it well enough, have a look at some health outcomes, some school attendance, some temporary accommodation figures. The Crisis and Resilience Fund is an opportunity to access and gain information and insight from residents that we may ordinarily miss through main welfare mechanisms. So it is a great opportunity to do that. The demographics that need collating are important because, you know, like I said, we want to learn locally, but we also want to learn nationally. Could I have the next? I do have another slide. Yes, thank you. I couldn't quite remember how many I'd ordered there, and they look great. Thank you. So the policy challenge really for councils. Now, as it says in the slide here, the shift from HSF to CRF is not just administrative. It does represent a change in how crisis support should be understood. Now, since we put these slides together a couple of weeks ago, global events have taken over, and we know that we've got potentially more economic shock on the way in the UK as a result of activities in the Middle East. Energy prices are about to go up, and only this morning I was reading about the Chancellor looking at managing an economic shock in real time. Now, when the energy price cap changes in June, we may well be looking at a completely different landscape at the back end of this year for crisis support, depending on what the government does. So the challenge for councils here, I think, with the CRF, because my prediction or expectation is that once mechanisms already exist, once grant funding mechanisms like this exist, we see a repeated application of the same mechanism. So if local authorities or local organisations have any involvement or expectations around upcoming energy price support, it may well be through something like the CRF. Locally, if you're asked to distribute or deliver, intelligence from your CRF systems will support the intelligent and targeted allocation of funding to households we already know may well be in need, without them needing to come to us. So again, have a think about CRF, not just in isolation. So HSF's biggest issue was the short-term funding led to short-term policy making, which led to a kind of lack of attention to detail when it came to getting the money out the door. No one's to blame. The government may well be to blame actually on this one, because of the way in which they deliver this grant funding dictates the way policymakers deliver what they've been expected to deliver. CRF is different. It isn't just different in terms of it being a political byline around supporting vulnerable families. It's a nod and an instruction to councils that we need to do things slightly differently this time. We've got 3 years worth of funding certainty. We need to be more measured about it. We need to be more targeted about it, and we need to be a little smarter about it as well. Now, in terms of the policy challenge for councils, I think it splits into 3 different areas. So we've got delivery systems, data and learning, and then long-term policy development. And I've kind of talked about this already, sort of trying to weave it in. But I do think that if you take away different anything from this webinar, it's these 3 things. So councils need to coordinate services across services and community partners. This is more essential with the Crisis and Resilience Fund. With HSF, there was a level of forgiveness because the government, I think, held their hands up and said, fair enough, we see what we've done now. No learning, never mind. CRF's different, delivery systems need to be different. In terms of data and learning, we need to think right at the beginning about how schemes capture meaningful information. For, as I've been talking about, that iterative delivery. I want to see councils learning in year 2 from year 1, not just getting to the end of year 3 and thinking, well, gosh, what's next? You know, we want to then be able to say to our teams, to our policymaking teams, to our members, to our leaders, to say, these are the people that we've helped. This is why we've helped them. These were the outcomes. But that needs thinking about now. I've evaluated dozens of grant funding evaluation delivery programs up and down the country, a lot of them in Wales by chance. And any organisation or any programme that thinks about evaluation and data at the end is doomed. We can never unpick. It's quite difficult to even literally remember how things have gone. What we need is this formative planning right up front, and the services and support and software that can enable that. It's invaluable. By the time you get to the end of year 1, end of year 2, and certainly the end of year 3, you will definitely be glad that you thought about this at the beginning, because when it comes to learning, you can't backfill that data. It's almost impossible, and that's when learning becomes qualitative, and it stops us from being able to demonstrate impact, to apply for more funding, to get more money into your local communities from grant funding, from external funders. But this is a golden opportunity. Now, in terms of long-term policy development, I put on here, CRF creates an opportunity to shape future of local welfare support. It does. Again, use this temporary stability, another oxymoron from me, use this temporary stability to be able to learn about your communities, and to do so in a way that supports their communities through your third sector partners. It doesn't have to be that everybody comes to the council. Part of the Crisis and Resilience Fund is strengthening that community infrastructure. This is a really good way of doing it, because what we haven't talked about here really is the two hats that councils wear when it comes to people in crisis, because people in crisis don't always want to approach their council, quite understandably, because councils are often debt collectors at the same time. Now, when you then deliver through trusted third sector partners, you can give more trust to your local residents, you can distance the council a little bit more. But that comes, or has come before now, with a real loss of data, a loss of learning, and a loss of closing that management information loop. Architect Services can help you with that. So the DWP may well request, easy for me to say, the DWP may well request information ad hoc, but we do know that the reporting requirements are very different. From a policy making perspective, this adds a layer of complexity. It is more time, but we do have more money, more funding certainty, and more opportunity to do a little more with it. I don't think I have another slide, Sam. I'm going to just double check.
I think that's everything.
Okay, thank you. So that's my sort of 2 pence really on the Crisis and Resilience Fund. I think understanding how we've got here is important, but I also think this now, before delivery plans are put in place, before the end of year 1, certainly, it's an opportunity to have a good look, not just at satisfying the government's reporting requirements. That's the bare minimum. What I want to see councils doing is genuinely building local welfare assistance intelligence, and using that not just to target Crisis and Resilience Fund outputs, but to sort of understand your local communities a little better work with VCFSE partners, and a little more sort of learning by the end of it. I'm more than happy to answer any questions. I will hop onto the chat and see if there's anything there, but once Joel and Sam have done their bit, I'm more than happy to answer any policy related questions. Thank you.
Thanks, Rachel. I hope everyone can hear me okay. I'm getting some nods. That's good. I think I was on the wrong microphone. So yeah, thank you, Rachel. And yeah, as she says, if you've got any questions for Rachel, please feel free to put them in the chat. So before I get going, I'm just going to do a quick poll, get some use of the chat function going again. Just a quick show of hands, I suppose, really. Are you currently, as a local authority, able to provide the live reporting that DWP potentially going to ask you for when they come and do their ad hoc knocking on the doors? So just some yeses and nos, maybe some possibles in the chat would be great. But yeah, as part of the new reporting requirements that are being shown by DWP, as well as the move to 6 monthly reporting in their format, which we'll be talking about in a moment, there's also that requirement that they can come knocking seemingly whenever they want, and ask you for an update as to where you are on the 24th of March with that funding. So if anyone is able to put anything in the chat, whether that is something you're currently able to do, not able to do. Tom up in Liverpool, not able to, but will be able to quite soon. That's good news. Yeah, as other people would like to put in there, that would be great, but I'll keep going as I'm conscious of time. So I'm just going to tell you a bit more about what the new reporting requirements are for CRF.
So there are 5 main parts that I think DWP would sort of highlight. There's the delivery plan. That's got to be in by the 1st of July. And as Rachel has alluded to, for a lot of local authorities, they are not going to know what form of LGR they are going to be in year 3 of that programme. So that's going to be very difficult for areas such as Kent, such as Oxfordshire, I think, such as Devon, that know they are on this CRF journey, but don't know what flavour, I suppose, of local government reorganisation they're going to be. But that delivery plan has got to be in for all those upper tier local authorities. That's your county councils, metropolitan authorities, your unitary authorities, etc. There's then going to be MI reporting every 6 months, but also that requirement, as I said, for live on-demand reporting from DWP. But we also know that might be things that your members are asking for, your chief exec is asking for. It's the sort of thing that you might get requests from FOI and other bits and pieces to also know how that money is being spent. And again, that need for that sort of regular live reporting will be essential. There's that outcomes and impact reporting, compliance and government requirements, and then your cross-departmental, your reporting not only on what you're doing possibly in revenues and benefits or in housing. We know it's household support fund plus your discretionary housing payments now. It's reporting all of that together. It's tying up 2 different arms of local government, and be working in and around those sectors for a long time. There are organisations that do this very well already. I don't know if they're on the call, but South Norfolk and Broadlands, absolute tip my hat off to you that you've ingrained your housing within your revenues and benefits team. It's somewhere where it works really well. There are other local authorities, I won't do any naming and shaming, but where that, there isn't that joined up, that handheld approach quite so much. But the overall purpose of the reporting sort of stays similar, but there is much more around the impact, the prevention, and finding out what works, doing more of what works, and integrating that housing part in, obviously as part of crisis resilience funding. Obviously, there's going to be less reporting theoretically with CRF. We're moving to that twice a year rather than 4 times a year. But there's that request as well from DWP that it's kept up to date. There's the live MI reporting in there as well. CRF is obviously now going to be across 4 strands rather than 2, maybe 3 with HSF. So we've got that reporting across crisis payments, across your housing payments, your resilience services, but also those community partners, your CABs, your local Age UK, those other organisations that are out there spending the money in your local communities. We're going to need the impacts from them as well brought back into your system with that live reporting to go back to DWP as and when they may ask for it. Obviously, we also know that DWP have now been very strict with what the reporting is going to look like. So it all needs to be going into their form. It's not necessarily how you want to see it or how your members want to see it or how you want to be reporting internally, but you're going to have those outputs as well in there across all those different bodies. So how is this different to before? Well, Rachel has sort of caught up on some of this already, but primarily with HSF, we've been looking at making sure the money is being spent. It was short term. In my previous role, the amount of phone calls that I got when the 6-month extension around the election was, then there was the new 6-month extension. I think it was done with 24 hours notice. Now, we all knew behind the scenes that it was probably going to happen. You're not going to be a new government that straight away comes in and goes, well, you know what? Yeah, we won't do poverty prevention anymore. But there have been other decisions that maybe might have pointed in that direction. And ultimately, in a local authority, you can't spend money, you can't make plans for money that you don't know is going to be coming through. There were people who I've been speaking to that have been given their redundancy notice, that was basically ripped up. No, you need to now be staying on because there was the money that was extended. And this didn't just happen once. This was happening again and again and again every year. Is it going to happen? Well, we won't find out until the spring statement at some point, the end of March. We won't find out until the autumn statement when it was the 6-month one as well. So everything was short term, that you couldn't do that forward planning. That's changed. We're now looking at learning what works, treating things as a program, not just a temporary grant. stronger focus on impact, resilience, prevention, integrating those crisis, housing and resilience strands in there as well. So this will be looking at your your obviously your housing spend and your spending on what was discretionary housing payments, but also looking to be bringing in that sort of that live element, the cohorts of people that you're supporting, and making sure that the cohorts that you've identified in your plan are also who you're hitting. Now, it doesn't take a genius to probably work out that Age UK are probably going to be spending more money and targeting people that are elderly. But is that necessarily people that are over retirement age? Is it your over 70s? Is it your over 80s? Are they helping people to get additional support, etc.? All of that is going to need to be picked up within the new reporting requirements. And this creates challenges. It creates challenges for you on the call, for local authorities, and it's a big step to go from that simple spend and volume reporting to demonstrating outcomes, to demonstrating impact, in particular around sort of financial resilience and those cohorts of people that you've supported. So you now need to be evidencing repeated crisis demand. And we have all heard stories. You've all got a story about when you open up your household support fund, as it were. Well, it still is now, but you know what I mean, as it was previously, that you can almost guarantee those first 10 people that are going to be in there putting in those applications, because you know it's Mrs. Miggins from 12 the High Street, but she does it every single year. Every single year it's Mrs. Miggins, and she's going to be the first person at the top of that queue. Well, you now need to be reporting that it's Mrs. that it is the same people that are coming through every year, because we need to be looking at building that resilience and stability. You need to be able to report whether the interventions have addressed root causes of crisis rather than that immediate need. And this is something that I could probably do a 3-hour webinar on, to be honest, but we haven't got the time today, you'll be pleased to know. We also need to be looking at defining, measuring and evidencing those outcomes as well, and looking a lot more deeply into what you're doing. So CRF is going to bring much broader, much deeper data requirements. And this is a challenge, because it isn't like, as a local authority, you're going to be giving out every pound and every penny to individual households. You're going to be giving money to your CAB. You're going to be giving money to Age UK. You're going to be giving money to religious groups to help in their communities. You're going to be giving it to all sorts of different places, maybe schools that are giving out those sort of free school meal bags and vouchers, etc. And all of that data now needs to come back into you. It needs to be managed. And DWP want to know this now. They want to know this live. They want to know what CAB have given out so far. They don't want it to be that it's after the fact, that it's a bit wishy-washy. And even if they did, that is a lot to go out every 6 months and go out to your CAB or other smaller, especially your smaller community providers, and go, how many people have you supported? What were their demographics? What was this? What was that? All these questions that you're going to have to answer. I can't remember what I had for dinner last night, let alone how many people I spoke to yesterday, who they were, where they were, what they were doing. And that's annoying, because I've got a meeting with Joel after this where he's going to ask me those exact questions. So it's lucky that I've got a diary in front of me. But you can't do that for 6 months, and you can't be pulling all that reporting. So it's got to be something that is collating that live. And that is a massive challenge, because that isn't something that necessarily local authorities are doing at the moment. It's certainly not something that you're getting from your VCS partners. It might not even be something you're getting from your housing department at the moment, because of the fragmented nature of those systems. And we would hope that as part of LGR, some of that is pulled back more in together. At least you'll be the same organisation in every single case as your schools. It won't be that your schools are one department and then you've got your second tier of local government is your housing, is your crisis, is your benefits team. Everything's all going to be there all at once. We also need to be looking at where people are getting multiple supports as well. So are you getting people that are being double counted because they've gone to Age UK, they've gone to the CAB, they've gone to the food bank, they've done all these things? Again, that sort of data needs to be pulling through. It needs to be auditable. Obviously, it's got to be GDPR compliance. There's got to be a certain amount of making things unique and giving unique identifiers. But this is going to be a massive challenge for local authorities, and the local authorities that I'm speaking to are picking up. This is going to be very difficult, especially around providing exactly what it is that the DWP need, pulling this information out of your partners, and doing that consistently, constantly, and in an evolving way, so as that you're able to support those different strands. That is everything for me, and I'm now going to hand over to Joel, who hopefully will be able to bring a little bit of hope to this and be able to talk about what we can do to support.
Well, that's a bit of pressure. Thanks for that. Rachel's fantastic piece and Sam's fantastic piece. Yeah, I've got to hold up to the high standard and bar. So thank you very much both for that. And yeah, let's move on from this horrible picture very quickly, please, Sam. Next slide, please. So the slide here is just a recap on the point that Sam made earlier, but we'll deep dive in a bit more detail. The technology landscape, the solution landscape here available that we deliver here at Architect Services is really Power Platform led, and without getting too technical, the Power Platform is something that the councils have, local authorities have, from Microsoft. You already invested in technology, and what we do here at Architect Services is we effectively leverage this technology and make it available for you guys to solve your business problems, right? And we have a set of solution accelerators which are on the top there, so ICO Plan, ICO View, ICO Risk, and ICO Team, and that's all really powered by Power BI data visualization and Copilot, which is our agent called ICO Help. All right, and with all that data in this kind of single source of the truth, you can then do things like close the data loop gap, learn from this data, make those decisions that the guys were talking to you about earlier on today. All right. As part of delivering those solutions, though, and those services, we've ended up building bespoke business applications. So that's we've got one in procurement, we've got a procurement management app, we've got a benefit management solution, and then a grant management solution as well, and a facilities management solution. So we see grants not too dissimilar to projects really, but still the reporting needs are there, requirements, the capturing of the data, who is this money going to, how many times is that money going to them, when does the money get sent out, when does it get claimed back, all those kind of processes and policies and procedures that you will have to set up for CRF will have to be managed in a data set, in a system, so that at any point in time, anybody, DWP or internally, or even yourselves want to go and analyze this data to make informed decisions on that data, then it's all in one place, and you're not looking through 1,000 Excel spreadsheets, scratching your head, trying to work out what a pivot table is, trying to understand how to actually go and understand and learn from this data, and all those things that Rachel said earlier, all those opportunities you've got, you can actually achieve with technology underpinning the how you go about CRF funding. All right. So if you go on to the next slide, please, Sam. I'll talk to you just a next slide. Can you press the button? There we go. I didn't realize I had animation on it. Sorry. So just yeah, there we go. Lovely jubbly. Thank you very much. So our CRF grant management solution is Power Platform based. So it's all inside your Microsoft 365 tenancy. So Sam talked earlier about GDPR and security and those type of things. Well, the fact that it's all inside your tenancy kind of means we can solve some of those problems. But really it's about replacing those grant management spreadsheets, the countless spreadsheets and trackers that you probably have at the moment, and having a single governed real-time system that gives clear visibility and control over the spend. Right, having everything in one place at a touch of a button allows you then to satisfy the DWP reporting requirements, and your own as well. I think that's most important, is that whilst there's an external reporting requirement here, leverage that opportunity to capture the data to turn it into valuable insights and information. I think is really important. But obviously we can do loads of things, building strategic delivery plans. We can integrate into broader capability sets in Azure and 365 and all that other stuff. It's all available in this technology set. So if you had a problem in terms of risk management, and you wanted to connect risk management to strategy planning, for example, or departmental strategic objectives, then the grant management system can plug in the middle of those two points, right? And then if we go down to the kind of next level of detail, those key features and functions is that we're able to track in the CRF grant management solution. We're able to track those strategic themes, breaking things down into programs, and then reporting on specific funds. So again, you might want to start with CRF funding, but you could then expand that solution to any other grants management funding you may get and may need to manage it in a similar way. But obviously we're tracking the finances, the associated costs, building a bit of a, if you wanted to, build a bit of a cash flow plan in there as well. and then looking at those payment milestones and understanding when those payment milestones were achieved. If you wanted to, you could start tracking the benefits of that funding, either at a specific kind of fund level or program level or theme level, and then variances to that fund as well. So if you wanted to put specific amounts of funding into a specific topic, you could do that, and you could move the allotment of funding in different areas as well. Copilot assistance is readily available now on the Power Platform, which is amazing. So you could literally ask it a question: what demographic are we looking at funding the most? You could ask it very, very, kind of, I guess, rich questions that you would take you a long time to go into yourself if you had to go through the countless data lines. It would be really powerful and be able to visualize that information for you. And then that live reporting and that ability to complete DW reporting requirements as well, within a touch of a button, within a second, pressing the button, pressing the Power BI refresh, pressing the export, and it will digitally create that reporting requirement for you. All right, so taking all that pain out of that process. I've tried to keep it high level as possible because I can talk for Wales on tech, and I thought I just wanted to plant the seed of what technology can do for you, and then open the floor to questions, not just about technology, but for Rachel and for Sam. And then if you wanted some further information on how technology can help underpin your CRF strategy, then you can reach out to us and we can have a deeper dive conversation. I can show you some examples as well. Cool.
Thanks,
Joel. Thank you very much.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that's really exciting about things like Copilot is when those requests do come into local authorities, such as how many people over 70 have you supported with this fund? That is a question that you could just type straight into the system, and it's going to give you the answer, and it's going to give it to you accurately based on the information that's there. There's no more fighting with your Excel spreadsheets or downloading reports and, as you say, pivot tables and filters and whatever. These are things that you can literally ask straight off the bat, and the answers are going to be there. But yeah, we're now into the Q&A session. We've got about sort of 10 more minutes left. If anyone has got any questions for Rachel, for myself, for Joel, if you could put them into the chat, that would be great. While we're getting any questions coming through, I will just tell you about our forthcoming webinars that we have over the next few weeks. I don't know why the date hasn't come up. Oh, there is. Next, from Friday actually, and through next week, we are talking again about Microsoft Project Online going end of life. If you are using Project End of Line, Microsoft Project Online even, there are less than 6 months now until that is switched off. It's about half of local authorities are still using Project Online. So if you need any help with that, we'll be putting some stuff out from Friday onwards, all around that. So keep an eye out for that on LinkedIn, on YouTube, and in our newsletter. And then in May, we are talking about risk management in the public sector. Is your risk management process your biggest risk? And again, looking at the strategies that local authorities are using, both the things that are good and the things that are not so good, and how can we learn from those things that are good, and do more of them and share that best practice. But yes, seeing where risk management is actually creating additional risks for local authorities. That is up on our website now, so feel free to go and sign up for that as well. No questions coming through in the chat, which either means that we have been brilliant and we've answered all your questions, or everyone has fallen asleep. One has come through, so not everyone is asleep. That is good. So Soma has asked, what is meant by outcomes and impact reporting, and how is that to be measured? So I think this is probably a question that is better off for DWP, because it is their titles. But I suppose that what it is, my understanding, and Rachel, you might have something on this as well, but my understanding is this is looking at, in terms of your fund, where has your money gone? Have people then come back and asked for additional funding moving forward? And has it sort of resolved that crisis, I suppose? Is that your understanding as well, Rachel?
Yeah, I think The focus in the guidance on outcomes and impact, I think, is a direct reflection and learning from HSF. So if we look at the difference, HSF focused on outputs. Did you spend the money? Yes or no? Did it fall broadly into those categories? Yes or no? From that, we don't have any learning about outcomes and impact. The difference between outputs and outcomes, outputs are practical, quantitative. We spent this much money on this thing. An outcome is this family reported themselves in crisis. They're now no longer in crisis. Now, we quite sort of commonly for policies like this, crisis is being given local definitions. So when you're thinking about how you are defining a crisis and how you are defining how to measure and understand families or households, beg your pardon, coming forward for support, this how you define and collect that information matters for your outcomes and impact. So for example, an outcome or an impact might be a reduction in rent arrears. It could be, a family now has the white goods that they need, or they have more stable sort of cooking equipment, that kind of thing. Those are decent outcomes and impacts. The impact could therefore be a warmer home, higher school attendance. It's quite nebulous, and I think it's unreasonable to expect a council to have every impact and every outcome on their radar. But what you build and what you measure at the beginning is important when it comes to those outcomes and that impact. Because like I said, we can tell what money's been spent for crisis for support in the past, but we don't know about any outcomes. And that learning has been removed. So in terms of how it's measured, a lot of that depends on how you're defining your crisis and resilience fund, and I'm more than happy to take a conversation offline about those definitions, because they are really, really important, particularly for outcomes. Because if you're defining a crisis in a very definitive way, then you might be losing the opportunity to demonstrate impact. So it's really quite nuanced. And sadly, although also quite typically, when we get guidance like this, it's kind of half strict and prescriptive and half totally flexible and up to you. And sometimes that gives us a real sort of head spinning time when it comes to developing these policies. But that will be my answer. It's quite nebulous. But if anybody wants to have a look at what they're doing specifically, I'd be more than happy to reach out.
Thanks, Rachel. The only other questions come through, we'll be sending the slides out. As Joe said, the slides, copy of the recording, will all be coming out to everyone. There is a QR code on the screen if you do want to have another further chat with us about the sort of the tech solution and the reporting side of things. If you want to get hold of Rachel, you can also do that through that, and I'll pass it on to her. Or I think she's betterpolicy.co.uk.
I am betterpolicy.co.uk.
Excellent. Yes. Oh, and as Joe says, we'll also be sharing our white paper that has been worked on, which we'll have links through to the guidance and bits and pieces from DWP. But if there are no other questions, we will give you the last 4 minutes back. Thank you again for joining us today. I say we've got a few more webinars coming up over the next 2 months. There's normally about one a month that come through. Massive thank you to Rachel for joining us today. Really appreciated. And thank you to everyone that's jumped on as well. Lovely to see you all. Lovely to see so many of you in here this morning. And hopefully we'll hear from you soon. But thank you very much, and enjoy the rest of your day.